Welcome to Justified Posteriors Podcast, the podcast that updates beliefs about the economics of AI and technology. I'm Seth Benzel, possessing a highly horizontally differentiated intelligence. Not saying that's a good thing. Coming to you from Chapman University in sunny Southern California.
And I'm Andre Fratkin, multi-homing across many different papers I'm working on, coming to you from sunny, in this case, Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Wow, rare sunny day in Cambridge, Mass. But I guess the sunlight is kind of a theme for our talk today, because we're going to try to shed some light into some surprising features of AI, some important features, and yet, not discussed at all. Why don't people write papers about the important part of AI? Andre, what's this paper about?
I agree that not enough work has been done on this very important topic. Look, we can think about the big macroeconomic implications of AI, and that's really fun to talk about. But it's also fun to talk about the business of AI and specifically who's going to win out, which models are better than others, and how can we measure these things as they're happening at the moment. And so that's really what this paper is about. It's trying to study how different model providers compete with each other.
And maybe before we get deep into that, I do want to push back on the idea that this isn't macroeconomically important. I think understanding the way that the industry structure for AI will work will have incredible macroeconomic implications, right? If only for diversity, for equality across countries, right? We might end up in a world where there's just one country or a pair of countries that dominate AI, versus a world where the entire world is involved in the AI supply chain and plugging in valuable pieces. And those are two very different worlds.
Yeah. So, you're speaking my book, Seth, being an industrial organization economist. We constantly have this belief that macroeconomists, by thinking so big picture, are missing the important details about specific industries that are actually important for the macroeconomy. So,
well, I mean, not every specific industry. There's one or two specific industries that I would pay attention to.
Have you heard of the cereal industry, Seth? I hear it's really important how mushy the cereal is.
Well, actually, believe it or not, I do have a breakfast cereal industry take that we will get to before the end of this podcast.
Wow.
So listeners at home, you got to stay to the end for the breakfast cereal AI economics take.
Yeah, and listeners at home, the reason that I'm mentioning cereal is it's, of course, it's the fruit fly of industrial organization for estimating demand specifically. So it's a lot of papers have been written about estimating cereal demand and other such things.
I thought it was cars. I guess cars and cereal are the two
Cars
things.
And cereal are the classic go-tos.
Amazing. So what douchebag wrote the paper we're reading today, Andre?
Well, it was me, dear reader. I wrote the paper.
So we know who's responsible.
all mistakes are my fault, but I should also mention that I wrote it in a week, and it's certainly very much in progress. And so I hope to learn from this conversation as we let's say my priors are diffuse enough so that I can still update.
Oh, dude, I want you to have a solid prior so we can get at it. But I will say I was very, very inspired by this project, Andre. I also want to follow in your footsteps. Well, maybe we'll talk about that at the end of the podcast as well. But maybe you can just tell us the title of your paper, Andre.
The title of the paper is Demand for LLMs. And now you're forcing me to remember the title of the.
If you were an AI, you would remember the title of the paper, maybe.
The title of the paper is Demand for LLMs: Descriptive Evidence on Substitution, Market Expansion, and Multi-homing. So, I will state 3 claims, which I do make in the paper.
Ooh.
And you can tell me your priors.
Prior on each one. Okay, so give me the abstract. Claim number 1.
So the point number 1 is that when a new good model gets released, it gets adopted very quickly. Within a few weeks, it achieves kind of a baseline level of adoption. So I think that's fact number one. And that's very interesting because not all industries have such quick adoption cycles.
Right. It looks more like the movie or the media industry, where you have like a release and then boom, everybody flocks to it. That's the sense that I got before reading this paper. So I would put my probability on hot new model comes out, everybody starts trying it. I mean, a lot of these websites just push you towards the new model anyway. I know we're going to be looking at a very specific context, but if we're just thinking overall, man, 99% when hot new model comes out, people try it.
So I'll push back on that. The claim is not about trying it. Like, these models achieve an equilibrium level of market penetration. It's not like
how long is just trying it? Weeks, months?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
So you're pushing back on the idea that this is quote unquote just trying the new release,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But what is the timeline you're looking over?
It's certainly a few months, but it doesn't take a long time to just try it. So, if it was just trying, we'd see like a blip over a week and then it would go back down. And I don't think...
If they were highly horizontally differentiated, but if they were just very slightly horizontally differentiated, you might need a long time to figure it out.
You might. That's fair. Okay, so the second claim is that the different models have very different patterns of either substituting away from existing models or expanding the market. And I think two models that really highlight that are Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which primarily cannibalizes from Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And it's New Coke failed in this regard.
Diet Coke.
Yeah. And then another model is Google's Gemini 2.0 Flash, which really expanded the market on this platform. A lot of people started using it a lot, and it didn't seem to have noticeable effects on other model usage. And so, this is kind of showing that like kind of models are competing in this interesting space.
Oh my gosh, Andre, do you want me to evaluate the claim that you made, or you're just vaguely appealing to competition? Which of the two do you want me to put a
No, go for it. Yeah.
All right, so the first one is, do I think that if I look at a website with 100 different models, some of them will steal from the same company and some of them will lead to new customers, right? I mean, I'm a little bit... Suppose we asked this question about products, and you said, Professor Benzel, will my product steal from other demand, or will it lead to new customers? I guess, like, at a certain level, it's not even make sense, right? There's a general equilibrium problem here where you always have to draw from something else. I know we're drawing from other AIs, which would mean that there would have to be some kind of substitution. So, I mean, like, yes, I believe sometimes there's going to be substitution, and yes, I believe... sometimes, for reasons that are not necessarily directly connected to the AI model, the rollout of a new model might bring new people into the market, right? So I guess I agree. At the empirical level, I would say 95% certain that models differ in whether they steal from other models or bring in new people. If you're telling me, now there's like a subtler claim here, which is that the fact that some models bring in new people is suggestive of horizontal differentiation and is further evidence for strong horizontal differentiation. I'm a little bit, I don't know, I'll put a probability on that, but that seems to be going a little bit beyond the scope of the description.
Well, we can discuss that in the discussion session. And I think the final part that I make a claim is that apps and that users of apps as well tend to multi-home across models. So it's not that people are using just one model, not like app developers are using just one model for each application. And that's kind of, once again, pointing to the fact that there isn't just kind of one superior model, even, within a given model class. And Seth, Go for it.
Andre,
You're
you
already
did the
laughing.
thing again. You did the
Yes.
thing again where you said, here, Seth, do you want to evaluate this empirical finding? Or do you want me to now say this tells us something about the future of competition in AI?
Yes. All right, go for it.
The empirical claim, right, is what's the narrow claim one more time? Give it to me.
The apps are multi-homing.
The people multi-home. Okay, the narrow claim is we've got these apps. Maybe we give the user, the listeners, a little bit of context of what like a sample app would be.
Yeah, so I think about two types of apps here. One is a coding app. So Klein and RuCode are two quite popular coding apps, and we see that users of those apps are multi-homing. And then, or those apps are multi-homing. We don't know as much about the users. And then we have kind of various chat persona apps, and then we have some kind of utility apps like
we'll call them like
PDF.
let's call that second group like role play apps.
Yeah, role play apps. Yeah. And then we have kind of like PDF extractor and apps like that are also on the platform.
Very tooly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so we've got all of these apps out there, and now you're going to tell me, Professor Benzel, I think you would be surprised to find out that RuCode, for example, has both the Claude model powering it and an OpenAI model powering it. And that one is probably the thing I'm most surprised by, right? I would not be surprised at all to know that RuCode can either send its, Claude tokens to one data center versus another data center. That makes perfect sense. But the fact that you would sustainably have many different contemporaneous models on the same platform feels like a stage in a process rather than where we're going to end up. What do I mean by that? So why would you want to keep a legacy old model inside of your RuCode? So Silly Tavern is one that I like. So Silly Tavern is just you can do role play and talk to characters and pretend you're going on adventures, right? It seems like that Claude 3.7 should just be better than 3.5 at that, right? I really don't, my intuition is that they're not strongly horizontally differentiated. Why would you keep both? It will be for like legacy reasons, for like backward compatibility. Maybe there's a specific interaction or scenario that you had working in the old version of the app, and you want to make sure that that's still around for new users. So how would I think about this? I would think about, if you want to say that this is like evidence of multi-homing, this multi-homing evidence is evidence of competition because the same app wants to use multiple versions, I kind of disagree, right? The way I think about it is maybe more like, you're a car and you can either use the old muffler or the new muffler. And like some people have upgraded to the new muffler, but some people are still using the old muffler. And so that car multi-homes on two different kinds of mufflers.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can discuss that, that claim as well. I guess, do you want me to address what I think about this?
Give me a taste, and then let's go to the evidence.
Yeah,
give me a taste.
Yeah, so the multi-homing is not happening on an old and a new version of a model. It's happening on, let's say, Claude 3.7 and Gemini 2.5, which are both relatively new models. The other thing I'd say is that if you read Reddit, there are some users that still like 3.5 better than 3.7.
People on the internet will prefer one plain white cotton t-shirt to another plain white cotton t-shirt, Andre.
Who are you to question the preferences of the consumer?
Right, but I guess, all right, so this is my last comment on the priors, and then we'll get into the evidence, which is, this sort of speculation about what people will actually want in the long run is the bridge that gets us from this cross-sectional evidence about April 2025 to what the world's going to look like in 27, 28. So that's why I'm pushing back a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I don't want to make claims that are too great about 2027 based on this cross section.
Well, GDP growth is going to be 30%.
That's true.
And all of human labor will be automated.
It's going to be a lot of market expansion, I hear.
Oh man, listen to our Epic AI episode. We'll post that before this one so you can see what we're laughing at.
All right.
So Andre, I can think of no one better suited to walk us through the evidence of this paper than Professor Fradkin of Boston University.
Look, it's a very simple paper. It's essentially a few graphs. And the graphs are event studies where we see what happens to a selected set of models around the time of the release of one of the new models. So for the release of Claude 3.7, we see a very obvious drop in the usage of 3.5. If you ballpark it, it's about 80% cannibalization. And the adoption happens within a few weeks, so it's fairly fast. We also look at Flash 2.0. We see very fast adoption, and in terms of tokens used, Flash 2.0 is the biggest model very quickly. And then Gemini 2.5 Pro is another model that gets released in this time period. And it also sees a very fast adoption curve that doesn't seem to cannibalize other models at this time period. So that's kind of the evidence on cannibalization and market expansion. And then the evidence on multi-homing. So there's some intricacies with the scraping of the data here. Let's take a step back. Where does this data come from? Because
what is Open Router?
We haven't discussed what Open Router is. All right. Look, one of the challenges with studying these issues is that a lot of the data sits in these fortresses of data where you cannot extract anything from,
and we're trying for you listeners. We're banging at that gate.
Yeah,
we've
tried really hard
every day trying to get in for you.
Yes. So people who are using OpenAI, through the chat app, through the direct OpenAI calls, we're not going to get a lot of visibility into that data. We might get some auxiliary data from credit card providers, payments processors, and the like, but it's hard to know how usage is changing and how specific model usage is changing particularly. And so one thing that exists is this service called Open Router, and there are other companies that are similar to it. And it's built for, I'd say, a sophisticated user who might be like a software developer who knows that, hey, I might want to use a mix of models, or I might want to change my code to use a different model as new models.
Andre, what's the S word that I'm thinking of here?
Substitution, what?
Selection.
Selection.
We're looking
under
the light cult plate.
100%. Yes, 100%. But I will say, all right, anyway, we're looking. Let me just explain what Open Router is, and then we'll talk about selection and whether we care about that or not. Okay, so this is a very handy service that allows you to call many different types of models. It also allows you to set rules for which model to use as a function of things that you might not be thinking about if you're just a chat user, like latency, throughput, uptime, specific pricing, how it affects prompt tokens versus reasoning tokens versus completion tokens. So it's just a really useful service for the app developer.
Just to interrupt for a split second here, right? Honestly, I feel like you gave me more evidence for horizontal differentiation in this market just by listing those 4 different features than almost anything else, right? Because, all right, I could see why you would need to balance between latency, price, throughput, quality, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So, and there actually an interesting feature of this market that many do not know is that there are multiple companies that serve specific models. So this is obviously true with open source models where anyone can serve them. So we have a lot of servers of your Llamas and your DeepSeeks, but it's also true of the closed source models. For example, Microsoft might serve an OpenAI model, and OpenAI might serve the OpenAI model. And there might be differences in how well they're serving these models.
Does that mean that Microsoft has to know the model weights, or is that like hidden in some way from them?
That's above my pay grade.
We will find out for you.
I mean, Microsoft owns a lot of OpenAI, so
right.
I assume they have some access.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting feature of the market. Mm-hmm. Anyway, one thing that this company does is they publish a lot of data about model usage and how the model usage is changing over time, and also about how specific apps use different models. In particular, for each model, they put the top 20 apps using that model and their usage numbers. So if you piece these together, you can get some pretty good information about popular apps and what models they're using and how much they're using. Mm-hmm. And even over time, if you're scraping it continuously.
Do we know if this is for the apps that list themselves on OpenRouter? Is this the universe of tokens going through those apps? Do we know that?
I think it's a universe of tokens going through those apps, but not all apps are publicly disclosing it, even if they are using OpenRouter. Mm. Yes. So,
all right. Well, it's a fascinating data set. So it's going to show us the price of tokens. It's going to show us which apps are using which tokens, and we're going to get dynamics on that over time. So it seems like a perfect data set. Andre, your next big contribution is just noticing the data set.
It's, to be clear, the ML community knows about this data set as well, because, in this question of like, how do we evaluate which models are good and which are not? What we all love is revealed preference. Which model do you actually use? And OpenRouter has one such ranking, right? That's publicly available. It seems pretty hard to game. Although we can talk about ways one could try to game it. And that should tell us something about which model is better, or at the very least, which model is on the Pareto frontier. And so the machine learning community the AI community has been noticing this. So yeah.
And then they told you. So then your contribution was the translation to economics.
Yeah, I don't know who told me. The other thing I should say is that now certain companies are releasing stealth models on OpenRouter as a way to test them out. So that's also an interesting dynamic to explore. In particular, OpenAI has stealth released some models through there.
And these would be so if I was running Silly Tavern, I would become aware to me that there's GPT-4o version 2, and I could play around with it.
You would know that there's a new model called Optimus Alpha.
Ooh.
That is a frontier.
Elon Musk name this one. Optimus Alpha, dude. What the fuck? Oh my God! Somebody take too much testosterone this morning.
Yeah. So, all right. So that model gets released for a few weeks. People play around with it, and then ta-da! It's the new OpenAI model.
Got it. And then, but theoretically, normal app users of Silly Tavern might be interacting with this model for a little bit before the official release is.
100%. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So what questions do you have, Seth?
What questions do I have? Andre, it occurs to me that this population of LLM users might not be representative of the market as a whole. How do you respond to that limitation?
So I acknowledge it. I think that's very. So let me kind of push a little bit. So there are different populations of, what shall we say, heavy LLM users that we can think about. One type of user is your basic consumer, and that type of user might have a ChatGPT subscription, or might even use the free version or the Claude, even though really most of the action is in ChatGPT. We're not talking about that. I think that's very clear. It's a consumer product. We know consumers suffer from very large default effects.
Right.
They're not going to be switching very actively in aggregate. So I don't think this paper is about that at all. The second type of use case that we know a lot about, or we're aware that there's a big use case, is in programming, right? Mm-hmm. And here, I think this is a bit of a more representative sample in a lot of ways. Why? Klein and Root Code are serious programming apps. Where
even though they have silly names.
Yes, 100%. And they have features that are essentially at parity with features of VS Code, the programming, the Copilot in VS Code, and Cursor. Even though, as far as I'm aware of, Cursor and Copilot use their own software to route the model calls, you can also you can also do the same things in those apps. So I'd say the coverage and the user bases of these apps are quite similar. You might say like Klein and Root Code users are a little more sophisticated, but I actually don't think it's that big of a difference.
They're just a little weirder.
They're a little weirder, yeah.
So you think this is very representative of the market for AI tokens for coding?
Yes, with exception. With a particular exception, is that some companies place severe limitations on the types of models their employees can use. Mm. So imagine you're working at Google. I imagine if you're working at Google, you cannot
you gotta eat your own dog food.
Yeah, you cannot use O3 for programming, I assume.
You cannot generate images of German Nazis. They have to be. All right, that's a callback joke, guys. All right.
So then there are these other apps, and they're, it's hard to say, like, look, if you're an app developer and you have like a single use app, like a PDF text extractor or something like that, I imagine that you are actively considering different models, especially trying to optimize your costs and quality. And you may or may not use OpenRouter. I'm not sure. Certainly, there might be some selection. If some apps are less, if their developers are less sensitive to these issues, they might not feel the need to use OpenRouter.
Okay, but for freelance coding, we think this is representative. All right, now talk about these other settings, like the tools and the...
No, that's what I was talking about, the tools.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I was talking about like this example. Let's say you have a service where you send it a PDF and it gives you back the structured text, right? Which is a type of app that you can find on OpenRouter. I doubt that whoever is writing these types of apps is very different, whether they use OpenRouter or not. I imagine they're considering many models.
Right. Well, there's. I mean, I guess we're kind of like in the talk about it section, but like you could see a lot of this stuff getting backward built into the platform, right? There's this story, iPhones, when you started off with an iPhone, there was like a light bulb app that you had to install to get the light to go. But then they built it into a feature of it, right? So, I mean, in the long run, is there even a place for something like OpenRouter, or are these all features that are going to be built right into OpenAI, built right into Anthropic?
I guess the feature of being able to use the other models is a feature I doubt that they will build into it, but who knows, right?
Right, but they might give you different versions. There would be the within OpenAI version and then the within Claude version, and they could give you a selection of models.
Sure. So if you're like, and I think a lot of like big companies do this, they sign an enterprise contract with OpenAI or Google or Anthropic, and they're gonna use their models. They might even have like forward deployed engineers that kind of show them how to use the model in the best possible way, how to fine tune it, and so on. So I think there's a lot of, if an application requires really like close cooperation between the foundation model provider and the application layer, I think we'll see that essentially the different competitors splitting off into cooperating with different model providers.
Right. So you think that is one possible future, which is we end up with much more fragmentation than OpenRouter. So there would be, in that universe, there might be multi-homing across models, but not multi-homing across companies.
Yes, there might. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think multi-homing across models versus multi-homing across providers. Yeah, we should be kind of clearer about that. And I think the evidence that I have is at least not. It's not just multi-homing within OpenAI or within Llama or so on.
Ooh,
Yeah.
we'll have to see about that. All right. Okay.
Um,
All right. Other questions I have about this, which is, not all tokens are created equal. How large a range in prices are people paying for these tokens? Like, what I know you have a little table of a max and a min, but give the audience a sense of like how expensive can intelligence get and how cheap can it get?
how expensive and how cheap can it get? So it can be close to free, especially for pretty small models, and it can get pretty expensive. So there's an output price of $18 per million tokens that exists on this platform at the time I was looking at it, for example. And there's also
still cheaper than my ghostwriter.
Yeah. I mean, a million tokens is, not nothing for sure. And then there's, there are differences in input prices and output prices. And there's also something that I haven't captured very well in this data, which is there might be discounts for something called prompt caching. Things get more complicated the more you look at it in detail. Yeah.
Right. And the question is kind of, do these details suggest concentration or do the details suggest dissolution and horizontal differentiation?
Yeah. So actually, let's talk a little bit about just some very basic economics of this.
What the fuck is competition? Why do we want it?
Yeah. So I think, so let's first think about like the utility, the consumer or app developer utility part of this, right? Let's imagine that they have some utility for the different models, but they also have to, pay a price for it. So the way we think about it is how much are people willing to pay for the better model? And if we think that things are pretty vertically differentiated, everyone will want to pay more for the same types of models. If we think that things are horizontally differentiated, then different developers will want to pay, more for different types of models. And then there's also this question about the scaling thing. Like, yeah, maybe there's a model that's a little bit better than the other model, but it's a lot more expensive and people are not willing to pay for that. So that might be something going on. So price is obviously this very important variable to think about, and especially when you think about it in the following way. Let's say you have a hard problem. One way to approach it is you throw it to the best model. Another way to approach it is to call a slightly worse model 10 times and then pick the best answer, right? So there's some implicit kind of substitutability that might be present in this.
Man, so now that's so interesting because the story you just told is not a story about horizontal differentiation, right?
Yes.
But it is a reason why you might want lots of different vertically differentiated models.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe we don't have direct evidence on horizontal differentiation here.
For what it's worth, I'm not sure how often this pattern is being used, but it's certainly possible. Yeah. And then another kind of thing to mention is this famous Jevons paradox, which is not really a paradox.
No paradox is really a paradox, according to my book, Sleight of Mind, Why Paradoxes Are Dumb and You Should Just Know All the Right Answers.
Yes. All right. So, let's say we have an efficiency improvement in our model serving and we kind of lower our prices by a bit. The response to that might be so large that the total number of tokens used might go up. That's right. Kind of essentially the dynamic at hand, or the total revenue can go up. Yeah.
And so, it seems like that's happening constantly in this data.
Yes, of course.
Which is we're releasing better and better models, and demand just go up.
Yeah.
which provides another challenge for thinking about substitutability because we don't have individual level data. This is not a static market. People are entering this market all the time. You got to be, I mean, the figures you make are quite compelling that like stuff is happening the instant these models are released. But it's also the case that, you know, compositionally who's in this data is changing and pretty fluid.
Yeah, yeah. It's something I do hope to have more to say about as I've been scraping these over time. Because at least within an app, you know, you might say that the app
it's
is
homogeneous
constant.
within an app.
Yeah,
yeah,
but,
yeah.
You know, it's,
or maybe you loop together all the coding apps and all the
yes,
you know silly taverns. Okay, cool. All right. I mean, how much are you in? How much do you feel like you have to make a claim about horizontal differentiation here?
Look, it's hard for me to see multi-homing and think that there is no horizontal differentiation here.
Other than price quantity differentiation or like price quality.
But there, no, sure. But I guess a point that, you know, you can see in these figures is that you have, these are pretty similarly priced models in many ways that are being multi-homed at.
But the latency is a little bit different. Maybe I'm going to switch back and forth based on latency. There's a lot of different little things here, right?
Sure. That's fair. Without, you know, and, you know, without having the individual usage data, it's really hard for me to make these finely grained claims. I certainly have begged for this data from the CEO of OpenRouter, but so far, no cigar.
But okay, let me push it. Okay, but now let's talk about that a little bit more, right? Which is, if the multi-homing is driven by fluctuations in latency, let's say, right? Like, I don't have strong preferences between Claude and ChatGPT. I just want to call the one that's lower latency. You can definitely get multi-homing there without it being driven by any difference amongst the models.
Sure. I guess that I think this is very empirically testable. I haven't tested it, but we can scrape the latency at like, you know, a 5-second level and just see how much it changes over time.
There we go.
Yes.
Ooh, I've given you some more homework, it sounds like.
Yeah. So I guess like if we think that the latency is highly variable across over time, or the throughput is highly variable over time, then we might see this sort of pattern. If we don't see it being very highly variable over time, then maybe that's less, you know, maybe that's some evidence that it's not quite what's driving it. But yeah.
Let me tell you why my prior is so, maybe this is like the key part here, right? I have this really strong prior that I was not born with, but I have been trained by talking to AI experts that there's no such thing as the AI that's like good at military stuff versus the AI that's good at writing humanities papers. That it's all intelligence. You get more of it or less of it. Sure, at the margin, there's fine tuning, there's vibes, but with the right sort of prompt, and, you know, with a sufficiently unlocked model, it should be just pure vertical differentiation. That's kind of when I've been in rooms with technologists, that's the claim they make. Now, maybe that's because they're at OpenAI and they're at Anthropic, and it's their incentive for this to be a universe where there's only two big boys. But serious people I've talked to have suggested there isn't such a thing as significant LLM horizontal differentiation.
Yeah. I don't believe that. Let's see what they actually do. OpenAI is constantly updating its default model in ChatGPT, and sometimes they're optimized for one metric, and then they realize that they face a trade-off. So, for example, if your ChatGPT is a little too nice to you, that might lead you to use ChatGPT more, but it might feel ethically dubious for ChatGPT to be encouraging your habits of, I don't know, phone addiction, being that you're totally deserve to be addicted to your phone. So there's clearly a Pareto frontier of different things that these models can be made to do, right? So a lot of experimentation by the companies is, the form, how do we play on this Pareto frontier? The existence of Pareto frontier suggests that there isn't just one dimension on which things differ.
Right. But I guess where I come at this from is, okay, imagine there's like a continuum of steps of delivering the token to the consumer, right? Mm-hmm. First step is $500 billion pre-training run, which, make the giant pre-trained model. Second step is we're going to fine-tune it. We'll do the RLHF and give my model its particular personality, and it knows it's not allowed to work for terrorists or whatever. And then there's the third step, which is we're now going to plug that fine-tuned model into an app, and it's going to be deployed in something functional that a consumer can interact with. I guess the way I see it is like as we move down that continuum, this becomes more and more horizontally differentiated. And at the beginning, it seems really not horizontally differentiated. And by the end, it really is. You don't want the silly tavern AI, helping you convert PDFs, right? So I guess when I hear LLMs are horizontally differentiated, I'm thinking about that pre-training step. Mm-hmm. But maybe you want to make a claim about like usage of AI in apps is horizontally differentiated, which is at the far other end.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's true. We don't, and we've talked about unhobbling on this show before, and I certainly believe that lots of these models have capabilities that we haven't figured out how to get out of them, right? They know so many things.
I've tried really hard to make OpenAI do some of those things, and it's not as nice as Grok when you ask it to. Or yeah. So I think that's right. How these models are used in the application layer can be differentiated, even if we think that at the foundational level it's just a ball of clay, and some of these balls are bigger clay balls than other balls. Oh, right. And when you have smaller clay balls, you can't build the Mona Lisa clay balls. Right. So it's like a capacity thing. I mean, it just brings us back to there's a vertical aspect and a horizontal aspect. And the question is, like, in the market competition for AIs, where do those two come in, right? Because in terms of app deployment, you wouldn't expect like vertical. I mean, everyone's just going to use they're going to use models that are on the Pareto frontier. So you'd expect the vertical differentiation to be less apparent in that last stage, right?
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that models like Gemini 2.5 Pro and Claude 3.7 Sonnet are both close to the frontier, but some people just like one and some people like the other, and that is horizontal differentiation to me.
Right, and now
you think and you think it's like maybe there's this like there's a cost difference and there might be latency differences, and that's really what's driving the usage patterns.
Or maybe the prices are identical and I'm epsilon horizontally differentiated, and that's enough.
Yeah.
I guess like last thing is that I think my instinct is that horizontal differentiation will become less important over time, right? So if you think about these balls of clay getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Sculpting them exactly the way you want is going to get easier and easier as you have like more and more clay to discard. Do you buy that argument?
I think we will get better at sculpting these things over time. I think that is certainly true. And I think that comes back to your question about, are we going to have horizontal differentiation in the sculpting step? And then the question is, who's going to be sculpting it? Is it going to be specific app developers sculpting it? Is it still going to be the big labs that sculpt it in very specific ways?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that
Right. I mean, it makes it
yeah.
like if we're doing the sculpting at the app stage, right, there's just a lot more room for horizontal
Yes.
differentiation, right? Because there's a lot more players who are going to be involved. And that's the domain where, like, yeah, it does mean $1 to a consumer whether the interface is blue versus pink, and like even stupid shit like that can support an industry. No offense to app developers out there. Okay, so one question that is kind of like the implicit background question in this paper, in my opinion,
Okay.
but is a prior we did not put a probability on, but I just kind of want to ask you, like, you can come at this with having done this research. You don't have to do it in a priori way, which is like, do you think the market for AI will be relatively competitive or relatively concentrated in 4 or 5 years? Because I mean, my reading of this paper was like it's a shot for it's going to be less concentrated and more competitive than you think.
I think it depends a lot on complementarity of other things.
There you go. Spoken like Catherine Tucker. We had her asking her about AI competition. She's like, well, oh my God, Catherine Tucker. Catherine Tucker really thing.
That's not how she talks.
She does not talk like that. So I'm not going to try to do my Catherine Tucker voice. But like her point was like, we know how to do antitrust. It has to do with networks of complementarities and substitution abilities. There's nothing special about AIs. Is that kind of your take?
I'm not going to make the claim that we know how to do antitrust of AI.
Mm.
That seems premature, to say the least. um, I will say that the concentration of the industry is very likely to be determined by complementary integration assets. So, how important is it to have that Anthropic engineer sitting at, SAP integrating the specific molded version of Claude into a
Mm.
particular application or not? Or is it something where the people at SAP will just call Open Router and it's just going to be good enough that way, and they don't have to do specific SaaS contracts with Anthropic or anything like that? And that's hard for me to answer right now. Um, but if I were a betting man, I'd say that there'd be a handful of models that are pretty competitive with each other. But I don't think there would be like 1,000 models that are competitive with each other.
Right. At the
Yeah,
frontier, there's not enough room at the top at the
yeah.
frontier, just because these training runs will be so expensive. I guess that's kind of, as I was reading this paper, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, like, how many people are going to come up with $500 billion to pre-train their own models, right? It just seems like there's a maximum on how competitive this industry can get.
But I guess I'd say like five is often enough to get a very competitive dynamic. Why do we want competition? It's not just because we want a bunch of competitors for competitors' sake. We actually want there to be the correct incentives to innovate and then to price fairly, right? So those are kind of the two things we're trading off. And there are some results in industrial organization that in certain cases where you want even less than 5 competitors for the right innovation incentives. So to me, that still seems quite competitive, even if there is a lot of concentration.
Right. It's all maybe another way of thinking about this is suppose we could wave a magic wand and either make AI more horizontally differentiated or make it less horizontally differentiated, right? We could choose which world we're in. The world where they're less horizontally differentiated is probably one with faster growth and, fewer implementation costs and less frictions, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It depends. It depends on how we think about like uh, about the specific innovation production function. I don't.
Mm.
It's not obvious to me that there's like one answer, right? Because you can imagine that in a horizontally differentiated world, more players are going to be able to try to innovate, and because there are going to be more rents. But if you think that it's all about just that huge run, that one big run,
Right.
then maybe you want it to be vertically differentiated and kind of a winner take all dynamic. But one where the winner can change from time to time.
Right. You want to so then we're in a universe where it's competition for the market rather than competition in the market.
Yes.
And that brings its own set of antitrust concerns. Andre, believe it or not, I took a minute to look at the same data and ask questions right along these lines of like, how concentrated is this market exactly? Because reading your paper, it's a paper that's supposed to give me some hints about the competitiveness of the industry. What's the first thing people ask about an industry? Is how concentrated is it, right? So, Andre, what's your sense? Are these models more or less concentrated than a typical industry? And actually, I want you to tell me. All right, so I've got three. I'll lay my cards on the table here. I've got 4 HHI indices I'm looking at right now. I've got open route. This is for the first week of May. We've got number of tokens called at the AI company level, so aggregating up to companies. We got the number of tokens called at the AI app level, so that's like Silly Tavern, et cetera, et cetera. Then we've got the number of tokens called at the model level. And then I would like you to compare these two to inequality in motor vehicles and breakfast cereals. So I want you to rank those 5 from most equal to least equal.
Yeah, so I will push back on you counting like the meta llamas as being metas, right? Because Meta is not the one who's serving them, right? But
ooh. Well, I could do providers too. That would be a fourth way to split it.
Yes. But generally, look, it's more concentrated than these other industries.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty concentrated.
I'd say more so than for all of them. With the model specific one, even with that, I'd say it's probably more concentrated than the auto
that
industry.
One is actually pretty low. So the
model was low.
So
okay.
I'll put some numbers out there. Just ballpark. Motor vehicles have an HHI of about 2,500. Breakfast cereals just below that. Mm-hmm. The number of tokens at the company level has an HHI of 2,960. So it's a little bit higher than those guys. But if we go to the app level, we're at 2,160. So that's kind of more competitive than motor vehicles and breakfast cereals, which we think have a decent amount of competition. And then the model level, so we're going to treat 3.5 and 3.7 different, we're pretty equal. We're at the 1,500 level, which is considered pretty competitive.
Pretty competitive, yeah.
All right, does that change your priors, Andre?
Well, I guess I wouldn't have used those industries as a comparison set. Right? Like I think a lot of digital infrastructure types of industries have a lot more concentration. So you think about cloud computing or search or phones, right? I think so relative to those kind of industries, it is less concentrated. But certainly compared to physical goods products, seems more concentrated. And I assume that you didn't calculate that HHI per car, right? So it's kind of
no, it was not. That was at the company level.
Yeah. I mean, and then disclosure, this definitely has been on my to-do list. I just have not gotten around to it. But I don't.
All right.
I don't think that this changes my priors very much.
Okay. Well, I've got a second fact for you. Stylized fact. All right. So now I want you to imagine. Oh man, I don't know if we have time to start talking. We'll save the power law probability distributions for the next episode. But let me give you 4 different things that might be more or less concentrated. Right? Here's another 4 things to think about the concentration of. One is 2023 U.S. CompuStat companies. One is the open router AI at the company level. The second is Hugging Face, Hugging Face is another website where people will post AI models. This is for free downloads. So these are like public models. So I have downloads of Hugging Face AI models. And then finally, I have all-time movie box office. So you tell me which of these is going to be the most concentrated. Hugging Face AI downloads, Open Router AI tokens, 2023 U.S. publicly traded companies, or movie box offices all time.
This is in the Open Router one. That's by model creator.
I believe that, yeah, at the company level.
Okay. I think Open Router is the most concentrated of these.
Correct. Second most?
Hugging Face.
Hugging Face second most? Third most?
I don't know how to think about CompuStat, HHI. That seems like what's the product market? Sorry.
The product. Oh, CompuStat. It's publicly traded corporations, so it's everything.
Yeah, together. But you're just combining all the market.
Yeah.
Just revenue by revenue, HHI by revenue.
No, it's market value. So
by market value. Market. Yeah, I think that'll be 3, and then the movies are 4.
Dude, you don't even need data. You got this down.
How about those priors?
Who needs evidence? But okay, you see what I'm trying to get out here, Andre, right? Which is, you can give me evidence that people are willing to move back and forth, but if it's the most concentrated industry I can find, it seems pretty concentrated.
Seth, I just gave you like a bunch of industries that are more concentrated.
All right. Okay. So now we go. All right. So listen, this is going to be a special 2-parter episode of Justified Posteriors. In the next episode, Professor Benzel will bring his own evidence, own analysis to bear on the data from Open Router, and you will be the judge. Is AI competitive? Is it not competitive? It's the future you're going to have to live with one way or the other. Andre, are we ready to talk about our priors a little bit?
Posteriors.
Posteriors.
Sure.
All right. So tell us. You had 3 claims here. I guess you're 100% convinced of all the claims and you wrote them down.
Look, my claims are empirical, right? So
so they are right.
No, I'm not saying that they're right, but I think
they're descriptive.
They're quite descriptive. So unless I made like a scraping error or something like that, I think they're, they are what they are, but the interpretation is obviously up for debate.
Do you want to take a shot at, do you want to give me a percentage chance that in 2 years, I don't know how to say this, let's say the AI industry will be more or less competitive than the average tech sub-industry? Is that a fair comparison?
I don't know what an average tech sub-industry is.
I know.
So it's kind
search.
of...
Let's choose search. How about search? That's
search,
really
the most concentrated.
All right. So
it's going to be more competitive than search. I have no doubt about it.
Okay. All right. Let's check that in a couple of years.
And more and also more competitive than phone operating systems.
Yeah, we got 2 big boys there. That's fair. Okay.
I think an interesting question is it going to be more concentrated 2 years from now than today? I think that's an interesting question.
You want to is that 50-50 for you? Or I think it's pretty, I'd put 90, 90 is too strong. 85% that it's more concentrated in the future than now.
Depends on whether we're measuring by revenue or by token.
Let's do tokens at the company level. Oh, I guess we should do revenue, right? Revenue is the more economic-y thing. You can do either one.
Well, the reason I was asking is I imagine there's still going to be a ton of use cases for small, cheap models. And my sense is that's a very competitive market, right? Like in the sense that lots of people are going to roll up their could, in principle, roll up a very good small model. It's the big models where we're really worried about, right?
Right. So yeah, so it's like the value weighted is the one where you'd be really worried about concentration, given that there might be a lot of small toy ones that people fuck around with. But I think
I'm not even talking about fucking around. There's so many things where, like, if you could have the model call, you would, right? Just think about, every email you're writing in Gmail, or like every line of code that you're going through. Why not call a cheap model just as a first pass? That might even be the model used to determine whether you want a, more fancy model or something like that.
Right. And you can imagine a universe in which, like, those super low level AI observations, intelligence calls aren't even like captured in data, because I might be running that locally on my own laptop.
You can run them
right?
locally. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Ready. You can run them locally.
So maybe there's some sort of size cutoff above which this like becomes interesting and tractable.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I can. I don't have strong priors on this, I have to say. I could see arguments either way. Maybe 60-40 towards becoming more concentrated in terms of revenue.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to get Andre's answer up in the next half of this 2-part episode on concentration and competition in the AI industry, evidence from OpenRouter. This time it's personal.
All right. Well, thanks.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah. If you have better data, we're very serious.
Give it
about
to us,
this.
please. Yeah, we'll
just
be your
give
friend.
it.
We'll co-author you.
Yeah. Just you'll get such great exposure for your company on this podcast at the very least.
Right. We will, and we'll also use your AI to write copy if you have an AI model itself.
All right. Cool.
Peace out, team.